So while we are still waiting for people to arrive to this event, I will launch a poll that those that are already here can take part in. So normally you can see a poll with 3 questions. With 1 question, 3 options, and you can give your answer, which one you think is the right one. This is about fake stories. So there are 3 stories, which 2 are fake and 1 is true. And you can choose which one you think to be true. And we will reveal the right answer just in a second with an explanation about what this is all about and why we're asking this. So it's starting to be 2 o'clock. I hope everybody is here. Maybe some people are still arriving, but I will start explaining the event and the project a little bit already. On behalf of Beyond the Horizon and the project partners, I want to wish you all warmly welcome to this final conference of Immune to Infodemic. Immune to Infodemic started about 2 years ago, end of 2022. Together with partners in the Netherlands and Finland, our aim these 2 last years has been to immunize EU citizens against spreading disinformation and misinformation viruses. We developed in this project easy-to-use tools and implemented vaccinations through online and in-person events. Today, we are really happy and proud to share with you our methodology and findings. We will present to you the tools that we have developed and the e-learning sites that will be accessible to all those who want to immunize themselves against dis and misinformation. And we will have some excellent speakers today who I shortly will present to you. Firstly, we will hear a keynote from Dr. Melisa Basol, a social psychologist and Forbes 30 under 30 honoree. As a leading global expert in the psychology of misinformation and building resilience, she bridges the gap between research and practice. Her impactful award-winning interventions have reached hundreds of millions of people worldwide. Dr. Basol is also the founder of Pulse, an innovation lab dedicated to crafting strategies for ethical and responsible technological innovation that serves all of society. She will share her research results and experiences with us soon. After the keynote, we will dive deeper into the vaccination methodology used in this project, presented by Fatih Ilmaz, Director of Projects and Partnerships at Beyond the Horizon and Coordinator of Immune to Infodemic. After this, we will hear from Markus Neuvonen, Digital and Media Literacy Expert at Faktabari, as he will guide us through the tools for resilience that were developed during the project. And this is followed by a short demonstration of the e-learning platform myself. Our panelists today represent the 3 countries that were involved in the project. the Netherlands, Finland, and Belgium. During the panel, you will receive insights on how they implemented the tools in their respective countries. In the panel, we will hear from Laura Bouquet and Jordi Nijenhuis from Dare to be Grey, the Netherlands, and Evelina Hytönen from Laurea University of Applied Sciences, Finland, next to Markus Neuvonen from Finland and Fatih Ilmaz from Belgium. I will maybe shortly present my screen to give this visually as well. Just a second. So here you see our speakers that I was presenting to you. I wanted to go through you with the code of conduct. So there will be question and answer tab on the screen. Please use that. If you want to post questions, we will leave these questions at the end. Except for Dr. Basol, who has to leave earlier, you can leave the questions now already, and I will pick a couple of those and ask her right after the keynote speech. You can also share your opinion or some information on the chat if you wish to do so. And we will share this recording and the link to the e-learning afterwards. These are our housekeeping rules, and I will now give the floor for the keynote speak to Dr. Melisa Basol.
Thank you, Elena. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Elena, Fatih, and the rest of the team for having me today. I will just be sharing my screen with you. Let's see. There we go. I hope that you can see this. Can I just get a quick thumbs up or a nod from someone that you can see my slides? Yeah, great. Thank you. All right, let's get started. I was invited to speak today and have also been given very generously 10 minutes to do that. So I will try and cover a lot of work. And I thought, instead of me talking about the projects that we've been involved in over the last few years, I thought it might be nice to kind of actually revisit the foundational the theoretical foundations that have underpinned and informed a lot of the work around pre-bunking and inoculating against mis and disinformation over the last 6 or 7 years. So very, very briefly, hi, Elena introduced me kindly, so I'll keep this short. I'm Melisa, I'm a social psychologist. I'm also the founder of Pulse, an innovation lab that focuses on responsible tech innovation, hopefully representing all of society and not just the privileged few. And I'll jump straight into it. So we all know that misinformation is a threat to science, society, and the democratic process. We have increasingly a lot of research piling up around how it affects societal issues affecting all of us, including political elections, a referenda, climate change mitigation and belief to begin with, adherence to COVID-19 and other health guidelines and vaccine uptakes. And we've seen incidences of violence and mob lynchings and death that has been fueled by misinformation over the last few years. So we're all very much aware of it. And in fact, there were around 1,000, just under 1,500 experts were surveyed from a variety of disciplines, and they defined misinformation as the #1 short-term risk for our societies and as a global risk, a short-term global risk, and sort of the top 5 long-term. And if you look at that, the only thing preceding the threats of mis and disinformation really are obviously the real challenges of the climate crisis. So we all know that it is an issue that needs to be tackled with and takes the efforts of all of us. So we are here today to do that. From a psychological point of view, we do also know that it's difficult to undo it because unverified information and tends to travel faster and further than any kind of information. And we have a lot of cognitive and psychological research that looks into how tricky it is to undo the harms of misinformation once it's out. It travels faster and further. It tends to be sticky. It tends to be very difficult to disentangle it from people's memory and to undo its harms. We only have to look at the false claims of certain vaccines causing autism, where we know that despite a wealth of scientific literature disproving it, and despite certain people losing their medical licenses and papers being redacted, we're still very much fighting this misconception today. So once it's out, it tends to be out, it tends to stick, and it's difficult to undo it due to a number of things that our brains hold on to when it comes to memorizing information and relying on it and retrieving it and making sense of the world. I also want to kind of just shake the room a little bit and say, you know, it's not just your racist uncle on Facebook. I think all of us are susceptible to misinformation, irrespective of our seniority level and expertise. In fact, research suggests that there's a very stark discrepancy between our perceived ability to spot and resist misinformation and our actual ability to do so. And while it is by no means a novel concept, its spread now is accelerated by the clash between our psychological factors such as the confirmation bias, cognitive depletion, social cohesion and erosion of trust, the rise of Gen AI, and sort of current information landscapes of filter bubbles and echo chambers and algorithms and Gen AI and so forth. So that kind of makes us think about, right, can we take a step back and stop misinformation at the starting line? And can we stop people to fall for it and spread it to begin with? So we never have to ideally, we would never have to do this catch-up playing with misinformation. And I'm excited to talk to you a little bit about sort of inoculation theory and the foundations of a lot of pre-bunking work that has been inspired by inoculation theory in the next, remaining 6 minutes that I've got. So this dates back to McGuire and his colleagues in the 60s, and very much came as a reaction to the aftermath of war, where US prisoners of war did not want to come back to the US, and it sort of created this pivotal shift in looking at, right, have these individuals been brainwashed, and is it possible actually to protect individuals against brainwashing and forms of manipulation and so forth. And as the name suggests of inoculation theory, and I assume now that we've lived through this pandemic in very recent years that all of you know how vaccines work, it is based on the biological analogy of an immunization process. And so the idea really is that the vaccine, so to speak, has an affective and a cognitive component to it. The affective component is the role of threat, where individuals have a heightened mental state of their susceptibility and feel more susceptible and sort of out of their zone than they might do usually. So that's part of what I did, for example, in this presentation today, where I said, it's very likely that all of us have come across it and shared misinformation. None of us are immune. And so this element of heightening that alertness is a key component to inoculation theory. And then it's often coupled to refutational preemption, where you model the way that you would engage with certain persuasive and manipulative pieces of content and how you would dissect them. And the idea is that when you do that in a weakened dose and in a protected environment, similar to a vaccine, you build the mental antibodies to then build the resistance to use that psychological inoculation when you encounter it in the future. And as I said, this is by no means a new concept. It has been very well tested across different contexts and topics since the 60s. But a lot of that and the sort of much of the work was applied to cultural truisms, and they perhaps unknowingly, the scholars in the earlier days kept the inoculation work very close to the biological analogy, and therefore very sterile also. But also, if we are to apply this to the current day of how misinformation travels online, we can't go around and inoculate every single individual around about every single topic and every single argument within that. So we need more scalable solutions. And part of the pre-bunking work has really been this idea of taking the foundations of inoculation theory and applying it to the current information landscape. And so, as I said, it's a communication technique built designed to build mental antibodies with the idea that you would refute them when you encountered them in the future. And the essential components, as I said, still the emotional warning, a microdose. So here it's an idea of what that manipulative message could look like, or content or video or picture. And then also exposing users to a form of refutation so that they know how to spot and refute that manipulative message in the future. And I'm mindful that I'm already running out of time, and I'm way too optimistic with how I can get through 10 more slides. But if we think about misinformation as a virus, we can actually take this a level further and say we can use epidemiological models to understand the spread of misinformation, but also how to sort of sustain it and contain it. So we can look at prominent social media figures with large followings and sort of see them as super spreaders, if you will. We can also understand that maybe most efforts of maybe just fact checking or debunking may not be enough to sustain the rapid spread of this quote unquote virus. And so in this model, in this paper, they conservatively assumed that people just have about a 10% chance of infection after exposure. And to that, debunking had a very small effect. Under that 10% chance, the population infected by election misinformation grows rapidly. Whereas if you look on the other graph, the idea of having them vaccinated would sort of contain that spread significantly in comparison to other efforts. And one thing about, if you then move out and say, how do we scale this and apply this to the online world, was that we looked at the sort of Achilles heel of misinformation and the underpinning misinformation tactics that seem to be the foundations for a lot of different narratives. I think we can all say that we have come across scapegoating or highly emotional language or impersonation or ad hominem attacks and so forth. And a variety of topics around misinformation narratives. And we've sort of taken these techniques and designed a series of gamified inoculation interventions where individuals are invited to drop their ethical pretenses and to walk a mile in the shoes of a fake news creator and to learn how to really use these techniques that are some of the most pervasive misinformation techniques that we've seen in our research. And the idea is very much that once you know how the magic trick works, hopefully you spot it in the wild when you come across it. And just to kind of show you what that looks like for Go Viral in collaboration with the UK Cabinet Office and supported by the WHO and I believe UNICEF at the time, we developed this choice-based interactive game that focuses on COVID-19 related and vaccine specific misinformation and conspiracies. And over the years, we've run a series of scientific papers that I can all link to you. I'm mindful that I might be running out of time, but in a nutshell, what we can say is that inoculated individuals perceive misinformation as significantly less reliable. Quick graph here. They are more confident in their judgments. So, and importantly, this is also a calibrated confidence. So the boost only occurs if they are actually getting better at it in comparison to the control group that played Tetris or other games for the equivalent time in our RCTs. And they're less willing to share misinformation. And these effects persist over time when we do follow-ups also. I think here it was up to 13 weeks, and the inoculation effect was still persisting. And our research so far is quite promising in that we have replicated this attitudinal resistance across age and gender and educational background and political ideology because of its sort of non-judgmental, humorous, and apolitical setup, especially in the games, and some of it in the video-based inoculations that I will not be talking about today. But we have run video-based inoculation interventions also and have scaled these around the world, including Indonesia ahead of the elections, as well as ahead of the European parliamentary elections this year in 27 different markets, over 20 plus languages. And the idea is really that, you know, a vaccine is only as effective as in fighting the virus as it is accessible. And so if no one gets quote unquote pre-bunked, can we truly combat misinformation? Ideally, we build a society that I often refer to as the societal resistance of herd immunity, as in the bottom right corner, that such a large portion of us have built cognitive resilience to misinformation, that even if your crazy racist uncle continues to post stuff online, it doesn't travel all that far to begin with. These were the 3 videos ahead of the European parliamentary election, focusing on the most pervasive European manipulation techniques within the misinformation narratives that our research identified. And, you know, this is a super speedy blitz talk through years and years of research, but I hope that some of this helps you think about your brilliant work going forward, and how it really can be rooted in the theory that has inspired a lot of this work. But I also wanted to end on a note that there is certainly no silver bullet, and we absolutely need a multi-layered defense mechanism that goes beyond the work of academics and fact checkers and media literacy. I think that includes data transparency and regulation and so many more interdisciplinary and socio-technical approaches, definitely also in terms of the arts and emotive storytelling. And we didn't even get to the AI generated misinformation part of it all. And so I think there's a lot to be done here still. But isn't it great that we continue to build on our very evidence-based approach to fighting some of this? And I hope that a quick recap into the psychology as to why we seek out and fall for and spread misinformation, and how we can build resilience to that, may inspire your important work going forward. That is me at actually 15 minutes. I'm very sorry, but I will take questions.
Thank you. There is one question in the chat, and I would like to add a little bit to it. So the question is, how many people could you reach by the game? You were already talking about the countries that you went to in so many languages, but how did you measure the impact? And also, I wanted to ask about long-term impact, because you would have these interventions. Do you have to repeat them often to have long-term impact? And how much time should there be in the between to reach good results about that? Oh, you're still muted if you want to open your mic.
I'm so sorry. You'd think that by now I have mastered this. Great question. The impact measurements obviously are very different depending on the format or the kind of project that we've run. So for Go Viral and the gamified stuff, certainly these were usually large scale, across countries and languages, randomized control trials that we've run online, as well as implementing a questionnaire in the game itself when it was launched for people to opt in to partake for scientific research. So we had sort of live in the field data, as well as highly controlled data to understand how that worked. And if you're particularly interested into the items and the scales and sort of our headlines that we came up with, and how we determined people's perceived manipulativeness of headlines, their willingness to share these headlines, their confidence in their judgments, the levels of threat, and all these elements that are quite key to inoculation theory, by all means, drop me an email and we can talk more about that. When it comes to the video-based, I didn't get into this today, but by collaborating with Google and many, many others, we actually had access to the brand lift survey option on YouTube. So these videos were run on YouTube in the ad space. I'm sure you've often come across this, where somewhere after an ad, they'll ask you a little question around whether that ad was resonated with you or relevant to you, or what do you remember about it? And that's predominantly used to make sure that ads work the way that the brands that are funding it want it to work. But we use that space to actually expose individuals 24 hours later, after they've been exposed to the pre-bunking videos, to a made-up headline using one of the techniques that they had learned about. And we asked them, evaluate this headline, and then a multiple choice section on this may contain, and then a different list of equally plausible manipulation tactics, as well as an I don't know. And what we did is that we tested that with individuals who had seen the videos, as well as with individuals who had not seen any of the videos. So we wanted to sort of have a control group, a non-contaminated group, that also answered this question on YouTube after having seen a different kind of ad altogether. And for the European parliamentary election alone, that reached over 120 million individuals, I think. And our lift as to the increase of people's ability to correctly spot that technique compared to the control group is on average around 6%, I think. This varies from local context and culture to country. The larger you go and the more you scale and make this generalizable for, 20 plus markets in Europe, the more you're kind of losing a little bit of the localization and the relevance. And so, for instance, in Ukraine, we did one, and there we had an increase of around 18%. So when it's highly contextualized and relevant and very much informed by local research, it seems to be a much better increase than when it tries to do sort of that bit. But you could say 5% of 120 or so, 120 million voters is still a significant amount ahead of a critical election, and that it may or may not make or break elections, whether people have that resilience or not towards that. So that's kind of a multi-layered approach to how we think around adapting some of these interventions and how we can adapt them to also measurements. And so we're doing some research now into whether we can use the quiz features on Instagram to run equally similar measures, but you very much have to be adaptive with what you have accessible and how you can do that in the wild. Sorry, Elena, you're on mute, actually.
Yes, you would think that I would know it by now, but thank you so much for having been here with us. And thank you for the insights that you have shared. I understood that you have to leave to your next panel, next event. But thank you so much for joining us today and sharing all this.
Thanks so much, everyone. Bye.
And I will now give the floor to Fatih, who will tell us methodology.
Hello, thank you, Elena, for giving me the word. So first I will share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen now? Yes, okay, great. Okay, thanks to all participants for being with us today. So after a very nice presentation of Melisa, so today I'd like to share our 2 years long projects, maybe results, findings, and our methodology that we have implemented for the last 2 years. I'm really excited today. So let's start with our challenge. So the challenge at the beginning of our project, so we were really very much inspired by Melisa and her team's work. So after seeing that immunization can be possible through different methodologies, we also wanted to address this challenge, spreading of infodemic, mass misinformation and fake news, such as the pandemic, viruses in our minds, so which also have a severe impact on our democratic participation, on our thinking, especially on some selected hot topics. So we selected migration, elections, and health as the main hot topics and we focused on these in our project. And also need for a preemptive approach, debunking, and actually increasing the resilience of people against the infodemic. So that was the challenge we wanted to address in our project. So our main objective was to immunize citizens against the infodemic. So maybe Melisa has already said, no one is immune to mis and disinformation, maybe exactly immune, but still immunity can be realized to a degree, we thought, by empowering our people to make informed decisions and especially equipping them with easy to use tools, so at their level, at citizen level. And we also wanted to attract public interest about mis and disinformation and fake news. Our target groups, so it was EU citizens and residents. We had a focus on the countries, Belgium, Finland, and the Netherlands, because our partners were from these three countries. So we tried to focus on some vulnerable groups. So how we defined our groups with those with limited and no knowledge and about mis and disinformation and using social media extensively. Also, we want to specifically focus on youth and seniors in our project, including also third country nationals, migrants living in Europe. And also we wanted to use professionals, influencers, maybe teachers, practitioners as multipliers, so who can use our tools to spread to their own network. And today's event's main objective is also this, so please use our methodology if you like it and our tools with your network. As I said, we are 4 partners, Beyond Horizon, Faktabari, Dare to be Grey, and Lara University of Applied Sciences. At the beginning, we wanted to have some vaccines, so to immunize people against mis and disinformation. So we need to inoculate them, but first we need to have our vaccines to inject, right? So we started to define our vaccines. So we use digital literacy, media literacy, and critical thinking as a foundation. And as vaccines have impact for a limited time, so we also thought we need to have boosters to immunize people against different types, new types of viruses, new types of mis and disinformation. So at the time, at the beginning of the project, we defined elections, health, and migration, which were really hot dis and misinformation topics. So we called these also boosters. So in total, we developed 6 different vaccines or boosters as a part of our methodology. So our vaccination methodology in 4 different phases. So at the beginning, we tried to formulate them with the input from different experts. So very much inspired from also Melisa and Sander van der Linden's work in that phase. We then, after the formulation, we started the second phase of production. So we included user groups inputs with small tests. And the third phase was injection of our content, what we developed as presentations, as tools, videos. So we tried to inject them with different events, workshops, online events, and different kinds of platforms. And the last phase was the modification part, which means so we learned by injecting, so we improved ourselves in a cycle. And now the cycle has ended, and now we are formulating new modified boosters. So that will be the next phase of the project. We will, Elena will talk about that at the end, I think. So let's come to our vaccines. So we had to define our vaccines at the beginning. So the first one was critical thinking. So critical thinking, we used this as the foundational basic skill. As you see in the big circle, so it can cover any type of skills. Of course, it's a really wide one. Media information literacy and digital information literacy can be also part of critical thinking, but we defined it the ability to analyze, evaluate, and reconstruct one's own knowledge, self-correcting, self-assessing, and self-monitoring thinking. So in short, maybe recalibrating our thinking when we come across the information. Then the second layer of the skill is media and information literacy. It is a bit difficult to separate it from digital information literacy. There are overlaps, as you can see on the scheme. So we defined it to ability to seek reliable information from various media sources, including social media, and evaluate critically the reliability of the media content. And the third one was the digital information literacy. So we specified it as one's critical awareness of on digital footprint, ability to manage privacy issues and personal data, and also general awareness of algorithms and AI-generated content. So based on these three vaccines, we developed in total 31 tools. So these tools will be presented by Marcus at the next session. So these tools are easy to use, tools that can be used by at different levels. But the aim was make them publicly available, can be used in different situations, giving some steps and also with some visuals that can make everyone to use easily. Then the next ones are boosters. So as I mentioned, we had 3 boosters on migration, health, and elections. So I will focus on one of the boosters now on the migration topic. So we had 3 steps in our boosters. First one is giving the main facts and figures on the topic. So we called it knowing the basic facts and figures on a particular topic can help build our immunity against infodemics. So on that specific topic. So if we know some basic facts and figures about migration, so then we are more immune. So we let's see the examples here. So for example, a very basic. So the concept really can be confusing for some of the people. So migrant and refugee, they are mostly used sometimes in the same contexts, but they are different things. Or drivers of migration to Europe, why people come to Europe, and so which percentages and which are having the biggest share. So just 2 examples on the migration. Then the second step is the common stories, common narratives on this topic. So we put these in claims, like here one of the claims. We selected migrants spread diseases and take advantage of our health systems. So what does this claim appeal to? So rise of hate speech, and also so we listed them, and then we gave evidence, counter facts against these claims. So then our target groups can have a better idea of these common narratives, and we aimed them to be more aware if they come across to some information about these narratives. So, and then the third step is using our tools on real cases. So social media posts, videos, or some texts. So we gave them those real posts or real information sharings. So, and then we used our tools to debunk them. Or so we used to have these 3 steps in our boosters. If you look at the timeline for the last 2 years, we aim to organize 20 events, or 20 event series actually, and we aim to reach 2,000 participants and also 20,000 reach out online. As you see, we had organized at European level and also national levels in Belgium, Finland, and the Netherlands, different activities, student interaction events, for example, in Finland. So students at the university were used as immunizers going to other classes, other schools. Or we organized workshops with smaller group number of people in Belgium, in the Netherlands. Also in Finland, Faktabari organized campaign events and multiplier events, reaching out high number of people, teachers. So these are some photos from our events. We have organized, I think, for more than 45 individual events in 3-4 countries. So we went to students, schools, we went to through NGOs, we went to the residents of the cities, and many different kinds of events. I think we'll talk about these in the panel discussion. And before closing, so our injection methodology at the workshops were also in three steps. So we started with giving a weekend dose of disinformation. So the aim was to make an awareness on our susceptibility. So I think at the beginning of today's webinar, so you maybe already answered the question. So that was one of the examples, and we see that most of the people cannot give the right answer to that question, and which shows that we are all susceptible to mis and disinformation. So so that is the first step of immunization. So to be aware that we are all susceptible. We made different activities, social games, interactive quizzes, also showing some videos at the beginning to get some awareness about the topic. And then the second step was giving our tools. So at different levels, depending on the level of the target group. If it is students, it's something, it might be different. If it is maybe educated people, it might be going more deep into the topics. We use different combination of our tools with the target group, and we use our tools in printed cards or digital infographics. And the last phase was using these tools on case studies. First, as I already presented, first starting with facts and figures on the topic, then giving the common narratives, and then using our tools on specific cases. So with group studies, it was really fun and interesting with different groups to make the exercises, and each group came up with different solutions, and it was helpful for them to build their critical skills or using digital and media information literacy skills. This was our injection methodology, and our outreach so far. So we have organized 19 events. Today we will finalize it. So today is the last event of our project. We reached so far 100, 800 people, and online it is far more than 20,000. And 32 countries in Europe, of course, but some additional countries were also involved. And we aim to reach more and more people to build the herd immunity, as Melisa already said, to immunize people against mis and disinformation. So this concludes my presentation, and I give the word back to you, Elina. Thank you.
Thank you. Then it's time for our next presenter, Markus Neuvonen from Faktabari. And questions to Fatih can be spared until the end, or you can already write them. Please use the Q&A or select questions. If somebody else says something that you want to ask, you can also mark that it's a good question. And I now give the floor to Markus.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon to everyone. Very pleased to see you. So many of you here. I hope you can see my presentation now. Yes, so I will be talking about the tools approach, how to use the tools to build resilience to dis and misinformation. And specifically about these three tools that we have already covered: critical thinking, media literacy, and digital information literacy. These are the tools that we, as Fatih presented, that we developed and gathered in our project and developed further to immunize our population of these nasty disinformation and misinformation. So the tools approach, what we thought about, thought that is the kind of a main problem in immunizing people towards all these kinds of phenomena, is that when we are dealing with critical thinking and critical media information literacy or digital information literacy, the problem is that they are not so easily transferred across so-called domains of learning, which means that they're usually bound into certain context. This is something that they share with basically everything, that any skill that we can learn. All skill topics are in general bound to the context of learning or the subject of learning. For instance, there was this study where a group of students were equipped with a scuba diving gear, and they were learning to speak, if I recall correctly, German in the bottom of a pool, and they learned to speak German perfectly in the bottom of a pool. When removed from the pool, that fluency kind of disappeared. So this describes beautifully how learning works. When we're talking about critical thinking, one of the kind of eternal, like perennial problems in learning critical thinking and related topics is that it tends to sort of encapsulate into certain kinds of domains. For instance, if you learn how to be a very critical thinker in sciences, then you are brilliant critical thinker in scientific topics. But outside that, it's kind of a random thing. So the sort of thinking skills that we adapt, they do not transfer that easily from one topic or one context to another. And this is something that needs to be addressed when trying to vaccinate people and teach them all these kinds of tools and techniques of information literacy. And when we are talking about mis and disinformation, to build resilience towards them requires this kind of approach that adapts to this rapidly changing information landscape. Like, because the topics of misinformation, they're constantly changing. They evolve and they kind of change shape and are generally very fluid in some sense. So our response to that has to be as well adaptable, so that it's like we learn these kinds of skills that are transferable from one context to another. So this is something that we needed to address in our approach. How to at least reinforce this transferability of these thinking skills. And this is the reason behind, as Fatih told, this is the reason behind why we approach it. That we have like the general tools, which are pretty general by nature, to these kinds of contexts where they are applied, different kinds of contexts where you use the same kind of tool. And the reason for this approach is to reinforce so-called metacognition, or thinking about thinking. So it's like when you have to kind of adapt some kind of like a general tool to two different kinds of topics or two different kinds of context, then you have to think about your thinking in a certain way. So this is like one of the keys. Reinforcing metacognition is one of those keys for creating these kinds of so-called mental antibodies, as Marcus used this kind of term. But what makes it a tool is that, well, this could be debated, but this is something that we thought one would be that they are generally context or substance free, meaning that they have this certain degree of generality. They're not general, like pretty broad scoped tools that can be used like anywhere. They have this heuristic nature, which means that they are formulated in these kinds of rules of thumb that are pretty easy to remember and very intuitive to use. It's like even when you learn it, it's like it's kind of sticks to your memory and it's very easy to use, like riding a bicycle, so to speak. And the practicality would be so that it would be easy to apply these for various situations and contexts, and they would produce an expectable result. So these are the kind of criteria that we can give for a good so-called tool or vaccine. What we thought about as well would be that it would be nice to have this kind of progression in challenge level, like from very simple to moderate to difficult, so that it kind of provides challenge to learn all these kinds of ways of thinking and techniques for living in this information landscape. Of course, there are limitations to this approach. We can take this kind of critical point of view that the world that we live in is very complex, and these rules are very simple. So there might be some issues and in transferring them from the different kinds of topics to and different kinds of media, for instance, the media platforms and so on. So the simplicity of rules kind of has to deal with all the complexities that we're facing. We have number of digital platforms. We have traditional paper media. We have different kinds of substance topics and so on. So nothing guarantees that these rules apply everywhere in the same way. It requires thinking to adapt those rules to those contexts. Which brings me to the second point, is that these tools, they don't do anything by themselves. It still demands this heavy lifting of application and actual use, so that the user has to still think and use their own brain. So that it's not, these are not by any means silver bullets for these kinds of problems and troubles that we are facing, but they are still something, and they are still very usable. Just we have to remember that there's still this heavy lifting that has to happen. There are in total 34 tools in our project that we identified or developed for this project, and I will not be going through all of them. I hope I will manage to go through 6 of them. So just to give a few examples of what kinds of tools that we've identified or used or unearthed. So if I start from this very classic one. So we have like a Socratic questioning, which is an age-old, 2,500 years old method of uncovering the truth of the matter. It is a progression of asking difficult questions and exploring your own assumptions. This is like a splendid example of how to develop metacognitive abilities when you rehearse like these kinds of questions to sort of get to the truth of a matter in some situation. Argument mapping is a brilliant tool as well. It's like you can visualize all these kinds of complexities that you are facing, for instance, in public discourse. This is something that you can do as well. It's a bit challenging, but it is very useful for reconstructing like complex situations where you have to evaluate various viewpoints on difficult issues. So this is like something that generally improve people's logical and logical thinking and intellectual capacities. From the media information literacy point of view, one of those kind of classic exercises would be to use media diary, which is again one of those tools to build metacognitive awareness of like how much media we use, how the media environments influence us, and how they for instance affect our emotions, and what does the media do to us, and to have this kind of a document where you document your own thinking for a period of time. It builds really much this kind of metacognitive resilience to media influence. These 3 questions are one classic again from, I think this is from Cambridge University. They kind of distilled what kind of questions would maximize the critical thinking potential of a person and in media contexts, and these are the questions that they came up with. Like, if you question who is behind the claim, and if you evaluate the evidence for the claim, and if you check what other independent sources are saying about the claim, you get this kind of a perspective that it's harder for disinformation and misinformation to influence use. This is a classic example. And on the digital information literacy side, a couple of examples. For instance, lateral reading. This is a technique used by professional fact checkers, and this is pretty easily combined with these three questions to create this kind of digital literacy that when you're on an online environment, it is very easy for you to keep your nose above the water, so to speak. So again, it's about like checking the sources and trying to kind of bypass this kind of how would I say it, like closed closed realities of media outlets. Kind of bursts the magic bubble of the media. And this is again something that should be completely self-evident, would be to manage your privacy settings, to have the know-how to how to kind of safeguard yourself from, for instance, algorithmic influence and cyber crime. A couple of applications, for instance, you can use the Socratic questionnaires to evaluate the arguments in public discourse, and if you have like a political issue going on, you can use the argument mapping for just sense making about the situation and how it kind of wraps out. If there's a political campaign going on, Media Diary can sort of provide you with this kind of a more reflective arsenal to understand that how these kinds of media representations and persuasive campaigns affect you, to build your metacognition. And you can use the 3 questions to evaluate the credibility of claims, and you can combine it with lateral reading again when you're evaluating stuff that goes on in TikTok and Facebook and X. Yeah, and you can also try to investigate algorithmic influence, like how the suggestion algorithms work. Suggestion algorithms work, especially during campaign season. Like if you maximize your privacy settings, you can see how the advertising starts to kind of look different. So key takeaways: these are hard skills to acquire. They don't come free, so we have to work on them. This kind of a heuristic approach may improve the transferability, but you have to combine it with applications, and you have to use different kinds of like specific topics to see how the tools work, and same tool in different kinds of topics and different kinds of surroundings in order for them to do their work and really stick and become the second nature of your thinking. Our impression is that they actually work quite well. I think this is something that we can discuss in the panel as well, but the transfer seems to work just fine. Just to keep in mind that we still need the deliberate practice. These are skills, which means that we can become better at it. Especially young people need deliberate practice in these kinds of things. And the metacognition and reinforcing the metacognitive skill transfer is the key here for them to work. Okay, that was it. And next speaker, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Before the panel, I will shortly present the e-learning platform that we have made, where all these tools also are, and technical, theoretical information about the topics that we selected. So I will shortly share my screen. I will start first with a short video and then tell you more.
In the year 2035, a virus has spread across Europe and beyond. But this virus doesn't infect the body, it infects the mind. It is an infodemic, a mix of misinformation and disinformation that has taken over news feeds, conversations, and decisions. From elections to health, migration to climate change, AI to foreign interference. No topic has been spared. The villainous spreaders of this infodemic have caused chaos, fear, and division. The infected no longer see the truth or think critically. But hope is not lost. There are heroes among us who have developed the tools we need to fight back. Together, we can build immunity against the infodemic before it's too late. Meet our defenders of truth.
I'm Mr. Truth Seeker. With my sharp investigative skills, I uncover hidden truths and expose lies lurking in the shadows. No conspiracy is too deep. No disinformation too sneaky. With me on the case, we uncover what others try to hide.
Hey there, I'm super curious. My superpower? Asking all the questions. I don't just take information as it seems. I dig deeper, and I don't stop until I've got the facts. If something doesn't sit right, I'm on it like a detective in a mystery.
I'm Fact Hacker, your digital ninja. Misinformation doesn't stand a chance against my tech-savvy ways. From deep fakes to synthetic audio, I hack through it with my trusty keyboard. I'll teach you how to navigate the web without falling into the traps of disinformation. And together, we'll stay informed and aware.
So we wanted to create this dystopian world to show how the world could be, and that the fear what could happen if we are not immunized against this and misinformation, what could actually be the reality, and that it's not so far from us. With these characters that were created by all of our different partners and up together in workshops. So these different characters will guide the students through the e-learning, and they each have their own section that they will present. I will now go to the e-learning platform so you can see what it looks like. So I will first go to the landing page where you can see the course. So if you go to this website, then you will see Immune to Infodemic here, and you can enroll for free to the course. After enrolling, you will have a dashboard where you see your course, and underneath you have a community. In the community, there are different spaces. So there's specifically one for Immune to Infodemic to discuss everything that you face in the course if you have questions or you want some input from others. You can also always see if somebody has posted something and go see what it is. Then in the course itself, it has been structured around these themes like you have heard. There's critical thinking. Vaccine 1, vaccine 2 is media literacy, vaccine 3 is digital literacy, and then we have 3 different boosters based on different themes: migration, health, and elections. So in critical thinking, for instance, here you have a presentation about the fundamentals. I will show you the overview, then you have a good idea of what is included. So there is explanation of why critical thinking is foundational skill, why it's important to acquire. Here is the structure of the course. So there are sections about logic and argumentation, about rhetoric and reasoning, and barriers to critical thinking, such as bias, fallacies, and conspiracy theories. And after each section, there are the tools to be observed. So here is the tool about Socratic thinking, Socratic questioning, and mind mapping. Then there are some practical questions that you can answer, some quiz questions as well. And In the boosters, we have facts and figures, common disinformation narratives on this theme, and then we have specific cases. So for instance, in the quiz, there's a question about confusing refugees with migrants, which often happens. And then we share the facts in the answer. So here the statement is that migration is at all-time high. As you can see, if you answer incorrectly, then you still get the right answer and you get the true facts that have been verified during this project. So here you have the disinformation narratives. These are narratives that come often across, that we hear often. And the inoculation theory is that when we are exposed to them in advance, then it doesn't have so much impact on us. So we have put the disinformation narratives here as well. And then we have the cases. Here is the case about the cost of asylum seekers. And the idea with the cases is that there is a statement from news or from some media outlet, and then you choose the tool that you want to use to go deeper into the topic. I will, for instance, here show the Socratic questioning. So you have this case where there's a claim that asylum seekers cost a lot. And then you can go asking questions about why was this written? How can you verify or disapprove that assumption? What other information do we need? And with these questions, you can really dive deeper into the claim and verify its origin and evaluate it. So this is about the training. I don't know if there are any questions. Maybe about the certification. So there is the idea of adding a certificate in the second phase of the project that I will tell more about later. And we will share a link to this training as well. So you can go to the e-learning yourself later on and see what is in there and explore it. And please use it. It's all free to use. So it's possible to only take the parts that are practical for you. If you want to do a workshop or some event around this, you can use those materials that are beneficial for you. And please use them and share them. I will now invite the panelists here. So we are missing Evelina from Laura University.
And I'm here. I'm here, but you probably won't see me in the participant
no, I see you.
list.
Great.
Okay, good.
And could Tordi attend as well?
I'm here. Hi.
You're here as well. Great. So we are all here. Yes.
Sorry for not using that fancy background.
It's okay. So we have heard something about all over about how many people were reached. There were 19 events, 1,800 participants in total, and about the target groups. But it would be nice to hear from your personal experience when you were organizing this. Can you tell something that stood out for you, or was it easy to find the people, and how did you reach out to them from your perspective? So Evelina, maybe you can start.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so like you heard already, Fatih mentioned that our approach was then the student or the trainer approach in that sense that we integrated the activities of this project to a course in our curriculum. And it was the first year safety and security and risk management bachelor students who had the course. And the course deals with communication and project management. So that was quite nice fit with this project as well. And there were always about 50 students on one course. And then they were divided into groups where each group then conducted or completed a small project where they then organized an event. So this means that our first target group was our students, and then we trained them in a way. So we discussed the topic and different themes and so on, and where to find more material and so on. And then they reached out to their connections in the working life and their for example, their previous schools or their kids' schools. And then they looked for a suitable target group there. And each small student group then organized one smaller event online. And there were many secondary schools as school students as target groups, or vocational school students. And one interesting group was the naval forces in the defense forces in Finland. So that was really a good target group, and we could reach over 50 people with that event. About challenges in finding the right people or the right target groups, I think it was quite easy for our students to reach out to their connections in the working life or their previous school. So in that sense, at least to me as their teacher, it seemed that they all could find a target group quite easily. But of course, the scheduling and the coordination of organizing the event, sometimes, of course, there might be challenges. But that is in brief what we in Laurea University of Applied Sciences did.
Yes. Can I hear something from Dare to be Grey, Jordi, or Laura, since you have not been in Word yet?
Yes, I think from our side, because we are from a civil society perspective, we try to leverage our network and connect with other civil society organizations and university in the Netherlands to reach our target audience, which were mainly students from these different disciplines, from psychology, international relations, but also we as I mentioned, we targeted also more civil society organization, and in particular like young activist groups that are working in as human rights defenders, so they could use their tools to in their work, especially in social media work. So maybe from our side, because we are not a big university, then it was maybe more challenging, but we managed, I think, to find the right people.
Great to hear that. Jordi, do you have something to add, or do I go forward?
Yeah, maybe to add to that. So I think reflecting on all the workshops we gave, what really seemed to work is finding or connecting with people who are interested in this topic. because as Marcus mentioned, it takes time. It takes an effort to really work with these tools and get accustomed to these new skills. So people who were passionate about these topics, it really resonated with them, and they used it in their work and in their day-to-day lives. So actually, by going that way and taking that approach, we found people who could leverage these tools to other people as well. So they found it useful for their communities.
Okay, that's interesting. Then I would go to Markus. How did you go about it?
We had something like 6 different kinds of events targeting different kinds of groups. One was with Laura University, it was hackathon, but I think like now in retrospect, I think the most kind of memorable event was the Educa Fair, which is like one of the biggest education events in the Nordics, maybe in Europe, something like 15,000 teachers attending. And by our calculations, we managed to contact something like 800 teachers during that event, and had like these kinds of like deep discussions with them on these topics. So and memorable. I think why should I pick this one as an example? Because it's like it kind of reflected how these kinds of issues are seen in the schools already. The teachers clearly communicated this kind of a sense of sort of a helplessness with these kinds of topics, and the urge to seek all these kinds of tools that we were presenting, and this kind of an approach, and they were, if I would say that they were, from our perspective and from our experience, I would say that what we encountered was this hunger for all these kinds of stuff that we were doing, all these kinds of tools and approaches, and something to use with young people, like different ages, like from the kindergarten to the university. They were all struggling with the same problems, that how to develop this kind of sort of information literacy, because the landscape is constantly moving forward. And one of the phenomena that was raising its head then was the emergence of artificial intelligence. And so this is something that we will be tackling in our continuation project, but I2I2, but it was already a topic there. So I would say that was like the one thing that I would kind of want to sort of raise as an example. But we had like several different kinds of events. Some with the specialists, and some with again with the teachers and some students, and general acceptance of these kinds of topics. Well, they're very welcomed from our perspective.
Yes. Fatih, do you want to add something from your point of view to this?
Yes, maybe. So in Belgium, at the national level, we organized also different activities and reaching out to 4 different types of target groups. The first one was the students, like some other partners, higher education students, just going there to a group of students as a part of a bachelor study, for example, organized by the teachers. So it's easy to go and then take them as a part of the project and take them involved, because they also had a lot of interest in the tools, for example, and they had some tasks from the teacher about the topic, and they had the chance to go more deep into the topic. We had good feedback from them. Second was the first time voters in a city. So with a collaboration with a city municipality, we reached out, I think more than 300, around 350 students before the European elections. So to give, they were giving the general information about the elections, and then we also came up with our own desk and our workshop to inform them about mis and disinformation, about our tools with a specific focus on the elections. I think it was the most interesting one from our side. On the other side, the language teachers, they were also interested in our project, and we organized 2 different workshops, and they wanted to use our tools, our project outputs with their students as a part of language teaching, critical thinking, for example. The challenge, I think, for us is, of course, most of the target group we reached maybe were people with more interest. So the challenge for us is to go find target groups who are not interested. I think those are the more vulnerable ones. Maybe this might be the thing that we can focus on the next step. For example, we wanted to reach out elderly people, but still in our plan for the next phase. Hopefully we can reach to that goal. This is from my experience in Belgium. Well, thank you.
If one of you wants to comment something that the other one has said, you can just unmute yourself and comment to it. Otherwise, I will go to the next question. I would also like to know if did you measure your impact somehow? Like thinking of the inoculation theory that people are immunized when they counter this disinformation small shots. Then did you really see this happening? And do you have something to tell about that? So were people really immunized in your activities?
We certainly hope so.
Yes.
Maybe I can comment from our side. And from in a way from the pedagogical side, I think our students who had to first get familiar with the topic and then train or present in an event. I think our students maybe somehow got more immunized than the people they presented the topic to, because I think when you are reading about it and you are learning about the tools and you are planning what you are going to tell to that target group, I think then you really then you start to think about those things more than just once listening to someone presenting something. So we had a lot of good discussions with our students about these things, and they told me that they have been talking about these things in their workplace, because our students are usually adult students, and many of them work as authorities, as police authorities or firefighters and so on. So they work in the field of safety and security. So this has been new to them, but still they have been so interested in these topics that they have been talking about these things in their workplaces. So I think that shows that they really have understood some quite key things about these things.
Yes, for the others, maybe you can share just something about what the most interesting feedback was that you gained from your audience. Yes.
I can maybe react. So we always ask our participants feedback at the end of the workshops. So From students, so they really found our tools interesting, especially on critical thinking. We made some case studies, for example. The case studies were really working well with the groups because they were actively participating in it. They were thinking by themselves to find out if the information is verifiable, it is true or fake, and also discussing on the topic together. So this was, I think, the most interesting most interesting part for them. So mostly the feedbacks I get this, and also easy to use tools. So just maybe one of the feedback after the workshop, so one of the students say, my view is changed when I look at social media and information. So I think it makes it shows the success of those workshops. So if we can change their view and their behavior for the future, then it shows somehow it's working, and we can maybe focus on these kind of activities more in the next phase.
Mhm.
Maybe I can quickly add to that as well. I think, from our side, at the end of the workshop, we will always organize the practical one. So we'll let them try the tools with specific case studies. And when they had to present their finding, when they had to basically fact check the claim found in social media, they were engaged and responding critically on, for example, reflecting on the author credibility of a certain post, reflecting on the type of language that's being used, often very much polarizing language. And so I think that was good feedback. And in general, like similar to Fatih, I remember one participant mentioning that those tools were helping her to navigate the disinformation environment during the recent US elections. And they also often commented that they were easy to use tools that could be used in the everyday life. So that was
Yeah. And then there's also the direct feedback from, let's say, teachers that we work with, like what to deal with. The nature of the tools is something that they're very easily accommodated to, let's say, to school teaching. It's something that you can use in the classrooms very easily, and it's like sort of what we have kind of found out and heard from the teachers that we interacted with is that there's this kind of a certain kind of joy of discovery when you're using this kinds of tools for investigating a claim, for instance. Let's say like lateral reading. It's like or this kinds of things. It's like this from the feedback that we've heard is that they kind of the students getting this certain kind of state of mind where they kind of trying to search what is the truth, it's very rewarding for them. This is some feedback that we have actually received from directly from the teachers who have used these kinds of tools in their school teaching. So
can I directly continue from that you're talking now about the benefits, but did you ever notice any side effects or challenges, such as like that the students would become excessively skeptical or overconfident, that they think that they now can recognize all false information and maybe it's not yet so? Or can you tell something about this?
Yes. This is something that I would very much like to talk about. When we're talking about critical thinking, it can be said that like a little bit of critical thinking is worse than like no critical thinking at all, in a sense that like if you like have this kind of like a small idea that that, like, how would I term it? You can get really overconfident on your critical thinking abilities if you get too much rewards on like easy rewards on using these kinds of tools. So it's like there's this kind of a very well-known effect called the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is like one of the pitfalls in critical thinking, that it, like, you can get too overconfident on your own critical thinking if you succeed too much. So this is something that is like this kind of a pitfall that has to be circumvented in one way or another in order to kind of inoculate successfully the students with the critical thinking and all these kinds of tools. So that's like to show them that what Melisa said, that any one of us could be fooled. Any one of us could buy into all these kinds of mis and disinformation, despite of all these kinds of tools that we acquire. So it's like one of the topics that we didn't discuss here is the attitude of what is termed intellectual humility, which is that, like, even the smartest of us will be fooled with all these kinds of stuff said. So it's like one of those aspects that needs to be discussed in conjunction of this, that these are by no means magic cures for disinformation. These are something that help, but we still need to kind of question ourselves and question our ability to question. This is like the level of metacognition that we need to develop in the students, and this is something that we actively discuss with the teachers. That it's like you can teach all these kinds of tools, but remember this, that like they can get overconfident, and this can be lead into some negative outcomes, as well as like becoming like cynical or over skeptical about like, and nobody can say anything about anything. We do need to trust in some information. This is something that we need to have in order to cope with this reality.
But so how do you cope in your trainings, for instance, with this? How do you convince people or remind them to be intellectually humble? And how do you circumvent this trap?
Well, personally, I love to use like this kind of tricking pedagogy. I will just have to kind of pull out noses, like again and again. You have to kind of you have to show them that you cannot, like, even though you have all these kinds of tools, you still cannot trust your own judgment that much. You have to they have to have this kind of a sort of a fun, but at the same time kind of a shocking experience of the limits of our reasoning. I think this is the best way, and unfortunately what I would say the only way of teaching this kind of this level of metacognition. But I don't know, do anyone else have any ideas on this?
I think this is a very important question, and I don't have the answer, but I would like to build on it a little bit. So when I talk to fact checkers, they never claim that the truth is absolute, right? They always state, to the best of my knowledge, I think that this is false, and I think that this is true, right? And I think that's also how we should approach mis and disinformation and making hard claims. It's always to the best of your knowledge. So it needs to be backed up by facts, by statistics, by research, but the truth is never absolute. And again, it kind of requires cognitive flexibility to get to that point. But if you say the truth is never absolute, and the truth can maybe sometimes change, if new information comes in, you can make a different assumption. That's already a different way of looking at debunking, fact-checking, critical thinking, because it keeps people on their toes and also question their own thoughts and their own methods to get to that point.
If I may, I would love to continue, because it's like sort of a like when we're talking about fact checking, we are not talking about truths, but instead we are talking about perspectives and like well argued points of view. And this is something that you have to kind of reinforce when you're talking about facts and reality. At best we have only perspectives, and this is something that you have to kind of repeat time after time is that it's like, what is the truth? And this is some part of, you know, growing into a philosophically mature human being, to understand that it's like you're just, but you only have is this small keyhole where you're kind of trying to peeking into the reality, and it just, it's the best that you have. And this kind of attitude, it needs to be kind of a developed. Yeah, absolutely.
So it's more about the attitude change instead of I imagine normal person receiving news every day. It's not possible to go after all the facts and check everything if it's true or not. But if you have that mental flexibility, it already helps you to observe things differently.
Exactly.
I had one last question that that we still have some time to discuss this. I think that Laura or Jordi, that you might have more experience on the link between disinformation and polarization. Maybe can you say something about how you see that or how you counter that in your work?
Yeah, maybe I can start and then Jordi can follow up later. But yeah, it's we very much build our workshop focusing a lot also on the our biases, unconscious biases, and what as an audience we bring when we read information online, and how much we are very much biased. For example, a really important bias that we talk about is confirmation bias. So our tendency to look for informations and believe information that already agree with our pre-existing beliefs. And this is just one example of our tendency to read informations and basically being more and more probably polarized because we are less critical to the arguments, for example, of our favorite political candidates, while perhaps it's important to remember ourselves that to take different point of views. And of course, social media platform very much exacerbates these polarizations dynamics, and then hence creates fertile grounds for disinformation or misinformation to spread even further. So it's important we try to remember our audience that it's important to be aware of our tendencies, because they're very often unconscious. To be able to be more resilient afterwards to what we read online.
So maybe shortly to clarify that by confirmation bias, we mean that you search for information, for evidence that strengthens the ideas that you already have, right? So you have an idea of a political candidate, and you go to look for evidence or something about that person, and you only look for the articles that support your opinions. And you don't go to look for some different sources or different kind of facts.
Exactly. Yeah, that's correct.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think it's important to also, you know, keep our view wider, because, you know, disinformation, misinformation, it doesn't exist in isolation, right? It's connected to a heavily polarized discourse that we're facing now in Europe. It's also connected to how social media platforms are exploiting our emotions to make more money. So I think it's also important to look at the wider landscape. And as Laura mentioned, you know, disinformation in a way turns the world black and white, because it creates more polarization. It's often based on emotional language that creates this us versus them mindset. But also the other way around. If politicians rely heavily on us versus them narratives, it becomes easier to fall into the traps of disinformation. So I'm actually very pleased that loads of our participants by themselves mentioned this. So of course, our organization is called Dare to be Grey. We call on people to go beyond black and white thinking. But we didn't build that into the curriculum, but they came to these conclusions themselves. So that's something that gives me hope, is actually that a lot of youth are rightfully concerned about these issues. They're rightfully concerned about how we're being manipulated online, but also how our entire European landscape is turning more and more black and white. So I'm kind of hopeful that they at least recognize that and that they actively want to do something about it.
Does someone else want to add something on this? Do you see this link between extremism and false information, disinformation in your work?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like one of the key factors in raising, like in extremism is to spread as much emotionally, aggravating this misinformation. So absolutely, there's this link.
Yes, Fatih, do you, or Evelina, do you have something on this last question?
No, I think it's okay.
I will. Okay, I will.
Questions from the audience. I think we can focus.
Yes, I will quickly check on the Q&A. So there was already a question about the tools, if they can be used, but yes, so they can be freely shared. The more the better. There is a question about which is more effective in spreading information faster in digital platforms, info written in digital media or supported by visuals, fake visuals, or info transmitted through popular figures such as influencers or scientists. If we know this, we can use protection methods more effectively.
Yeah, this is something that I actually already answered there, but yeah, the answer is like it depends, because well, the context is as of course like you can have like completely unbelievable influencers and very persuasive texts and visuals, but on the general level, I think these kinds of media work differently. Like when you have written text, you can use much easily your reflective thinking, and it's like a kind of a slower media that you it's like your judgment is like online more of the time. Instead, all these kinds of social, like you have like these kinds of like influencers that use like use, for instance, TikTok videos or YouTube videos or whatever. The media is often that fast that it kind of circumvents critical thinking in its pace, and also having these kinds of talking heads and doing all these kinds of kind of live videos. I think they appeal to our psychological biases far more than these kinds of like written text tend to do. So it's like generally speaking, all this kind of influencer videos and all that kind of stuff, they're a much more powerful vessel for disinformation than traditional written text or just simple fake visuals, even though those are effective as well. But if I have to make this kind of comparison, I would verge on the influencers.
Then what do you think for somebody who wants to use these tools in a workshop? What is a good size for a workshop, and how can they best be used, the tools?
Maybe I can respond to this, Elina. Yeah, from our experience, from maybe 15 to 25 is a good number of people. So then you have enough space to get everyone's involvement into the discussion. So if it is a bigger group, then it will be more difficult. But the size, how to use them. So now they can, so I just shared the link. So you can go to our website and download them and print them at the workshops. Even in online workshops, they can be used by sharing also in the PDF format. So how we use them, for example, we gave cases to groups, and we gave them a couple of, maybe we call them the deck of the cards of our tools. So we gave them a deck. So from the deck, they select some of the tools and use it on the specific case. On the specific case, each group, for example, uses different tools, and they come up with a different assessment, and then they share their assessments with other groups. So this makes a really efficient use of the tools in smaller groups from our experience. So if others have different types of experience, so that will be also nice to hear them.
I think Dirk has a really similar methodology. It's nice to have group work. So we also have most of the time 15 to 20 people, and we divide them like in groups of 4 to 5 participants. And what is useful, I guess, is to show first an example of how we can use one tool to a specific case study, as also Fatih showed in his presentation. So they have a bit of a practical example. And then indeed it's interesting to use different tools so they can reflect on different aspects of the same post.
Yes, thank you for the answers. There is also a question, did you try these tools with groups of senior citizens? But I don't think anybody did that in this project, but this is something we want to do in the second version.
Yes, so we actually had this in our plan at the beginning. We involved some of them in the workshops, we have seen them, but I think we aim this for the second one, specific projects going to senior elderly care organizations or some senior, some NGOs targeting seniors. So we will try this, and hopefully in the next years we will have some experience on this.
Yes, our time is slowly coming to an end. So I will thank you all, thank the audience for the questions, and the panelists. I will shortly still present the future of this project. So I will share my screen for that. Okay. So how do I put this full screen? Anyway, you can see the slide now. There is so Infodemic second part is starting, has started already, together with partners from the Netherlands, Finland, and also Germany this time. We will, in the second part of the project, continue developing new tools, and we will expand the boosters to cover new topics. We will also keep on immunizing our target groups in the 4 participating countries. So there are new challenges that are rising that we have been talking about already during this event. And these new challenges require new tactics and new kind of reach. There is AI who brings new potential threats when it's being employed by those who have malicious intentions. And the distrust on public institutions and government structures is also increasing. And fear fuels rising extremism, like we were just talking about. Also, despite of growing up in a digital world, young people, they are not specifically well equipped to counter false information. And generally, digital skills don't keep up with the evolving digital landscape. So these are important topics to address. In the second part of the project, we will create 3 new boosters that are AI-enabled disinformation on foreign manipulation, interference, and foreign information manipulation and interference. This is FIMI in short. Then as third one, we have environmental and climate change. So we will focus on these 3 topics and start after the development phase. We will go to the injection phase in about March or April. We will again create different events online and offline and workshops. In one of our events, please do so. Follow us on our website and on our channels and see what we are doing and come there. Also, the e-learning is open and free for everybody to use. You have now the link, so you can subscribe there. You can download the materials. You can use them in your own workshops. So that's all free to use in the future. We thank you for this event, attending. I want to thank all the speakers and everybody who has joined us for these 2 hours. I hope that you have been inspired by these insights and discussions to stand against false information. And please stay tuned for further developments.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.